Okay, welcome into a special segment of Locked On Horned Frogs. So we're going to try this over the next few weeks. It's called Fan Corner, and I appreciate Tommy Fisher's with us. Tommy's been listening to the show for a while. He frequently interacts with me on Twitter, and he actually reached out and said, "Hey, I think this would be a cool thing to do to sort of get some more engagement." So I'm going to let him go first, and I'm excited. I got to talk to Tommy some off the air here, and I feel like I could do like a 45-minute podcast on his life because he seems like a super interesting person. And I'll let you fill everybody in, Tommy. But basically, you're a former college football player, and you don't have like the necessarily traditional route to TCU fandom. So, how did you sort of become a Horned Frog fan, and how long have you been following the team?
So out of high school, I went and played football at a small NAIA school in North Dakota, of all places. Did that for a year. Got really fat because the coach just wanted me to put on more weight, and my knees started killing me. So I decided not to. I got a job that summer working on a farm, of all things, and I lost like 60 pounds.
Okay.
And there was no way I was going to show up for camp. So that kind of ended my football career. So I transferred back to Montana State and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. So then I ended up joining the military. I joined the Navy. I became a Navy corpsman. So I was a medical person, combat medic. So I went through, all the schools you go to, and EMT school and field medicine school with the Marines, and got stationed in Quantico, my first duty station. Did a couple of years there, and then went to Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, for a couple of years. Finished up my undergrad while I was enlisted in Hawaii. 9/11 happened, and it kind of changed things. And I was fortunate to get out. When I got out, I had my degree, and then I started working at a place called Kaiser Permanente, which is a big healthcare organization. And I did that for 4 years. I was really involved with Hawaii football at the time. And I remember TCU was part of the WAC with Hawaii for a couple of years. So that's how I first was kind of exposed to TCU. And then when I left Hawaii, I moved here, and I went to a game. They're playing UNLV, I think it was, and TCU was a top 10 team. I think this was in 2009, and they didn't have enough fans in the stands, and that kind of hurt me. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a fan now. So I became a fan, and I went intermittently for a couple of years, and then in 2011, after the Rose Bowl, and when they decided they're going to the Big 12, is when I decided to walk in, and I said, all right, we're buying a 4-pack of tickets, and I'm going to let this consume my life. And that's how I became a fan of TCU.
That's awesome. Going off book for a second, what was it like going from Montana, North Dakota, like that climate, to Hawaii?
So Montana's cold, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but it has mountains and stuff to block the wind. North Dakota is cold without the mountains to block the wind. So that wind just rips through. And I remember one day at the end of football, I parked my car because I was living in the dorms right there, and I parked it, and the next day there was like 20 feet of snow, and nobody was driving. I didn't see my car for 2 months.
Oh my gosh.
But what would happen is everybody had, or some people in town would have these snowmobiles, and people, that's how people during this big winter storm, that's what they would do. So you would have people pull up in their little things with a couple of cases of beer, and we take it in the barracks and have plenty of drinks. So it was fun. I mean, it was cold, man. It was just cold.
Yeah.
And then before I went to Hawaii, I was in Great Lakes, which is another cool place. And then I went to Camp Lejeune for a little bit, and that's a hot, humid place during the summer, which is wicked. And then from there, I went to Quantico for a couple of years, which is kind of in between. And then after that, Hawaii, and Hawaii was perfect every day. And it was hard to leave. I mean, I finished my undergrad there, and then I started grad school and almost finished there. I finished up online when I moved out. But it was a hard place. Like the last 4 years of my life, like I didn't have, all I had was like a moped, a bicycle, And I just every day I would just wake up on the weekends and just load my little moped up with this, a 6-pack of beer and cruise down to the beach and just hang out. And
Right.
it was a totally different lifestyle. I wasn't getting anywhere, but man, it was it was a good time.
Yeah, it sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
So turning our attention to this team and kind of where they are, I wanted to ask you first about the quarterback situation. And we're recording this on Thursday morning, so there's always a possibility some news breaks. But as of now, there hasn't been a settled starter. I was asking you one, Tommy, like, who do you think, if you had to pick, who would you choose as starting QB? And what do you make of Sonny Dykes saying earlier this week that he thinks all three quarterbacks, that's Chandler Morris, Max Duggan, and Sam Jackson, might end up playing against Colorado in the season opener?
So who do I think should start? I think Chandler Morris should start 100%.
Yeah.
And if it isn't Chandler Morris, I honestly think Sam Jackson should be the next guy. Or Sam is Jackson's last name? Yeah,
Yeah,
Sam.
yeah, Sam Jackson.
I
Yeah.
think I think when it's all said and done, I think Sam is going to be the more talented player, just off of what I've read and what I've seen a little bit in practice.
Mhm.
I love Max. I love Max has all the intangibles that any team
Right.
would want. He's a leader. He's a warrior. He plays through pain. He plays hurt. He'll do anything. And I feel bad, but I've seen 3 years, and it's been 3 up and down years. He's
Mhm.
progressed a little bit every year. He struggles with the deep ball, which is something, we have high flyers, man. We got
Yeah.
people who can burn it on the outside. We need somebody with some accuracy. And
Mhm.
I think when you throw that, and I think if you throw just with what I've seen in Chandler, he throws with greater anticipation. I think he sees the field a little better. I think he processes a little quicker. I think he has a quicker release, which is something that's really important because Boykin had a tremendous release. It was
Yeah.
really popped out. He throws at different angles. I just think that I don't know. I just think that Chandler's going to give us the best chance to win. And by the end of the year, or even next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Sam's the man, just because I've just the highlights I've seen him do.
Yeah.
There's things that he does you don't coach.
Yeah, that physical talent is pretty insane in the little bit that we've seen from Sam. I'll put you on the spot again, but I was just curious because I know as fans, we typically say like if you have two QBs, you don't necessarily have any. But as someone who played at a high level, like, do you think there's something to the team buying in and like rallying behind one player at that specific position? Obviously, there's so many positions that rotate, but at QB, having that certified leader that everyone knows is the guy.
So the 1 year I played, we had two guys, and one of them was an All-American receiver who played quarterback because he was just so talented and he could run and do all these things. And the other quarterback was more of the throwing quarterback. And to be honest, what I did was nothing comparable to what these guys do. I went and stood down their practice, and I stood next to these dudes, and they're huge,
Yeah.
right? And they are fast, and there's no comparison there. But I think I honestly think that the reason Sonny even talks about playing the three of them is because one, he doesn't want anybody to transfer. I
Right.
think that he wants to keep them all somewhat engaged.
Mm-hmm.
I'm against it. I think that you should have one quarterback, and that quarterback should be allowed to get into rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Chandler is a rhythm quarterback if you look at it right. I mean, when he first started that Baylor game, he wasn't exactly amazing, but then as soon as he started getting warm, it was just flowing, right? And he was flowing. If you get a quarterback who starts to flow, you do not take him out of the game. You can put in somebody like Sam and do like a jet reverse or have him do some sort of trick play here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that you're gonna pull Chandler for a series.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
especially if he's playing well. Now, if he's struggling, then I can understand giving the other guys a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm totally fine with that. But I think once you get a starter, I think the team they need that leader, right? They need that guy.
Yeah.
And that's just my personal opinion.
And so you mentioned Sonny Dykes. I mean, we know him well from his SMU days. I don't know what your thoughts were on the hire, but just sort of your impressions on him in year one and what you're excited about.
Okay, so when he was first hired, I was like, I wasn't too excited. I wasn't,
Sure.
I was like, okay, it makes sense. I understand it makes sense. once I heard him talk and I heard him kind of put out his coaching philosophy and things like that, I was like, one, I've never heard somebody talk so smoothly wearing a TCU coaching uniform in a while. Like
Yeah.
this guy can articulate everything he wants to say and he does it perfectly, right? So I just, I like the idea of how he's not involved in every little thing. I like the idea if he wears that hat of all hats where he oversees people. And I love the idea that he hires the best possible people to do their job, right? So I mean, if you just look at when he first hired, like his running back coach who was a star recruiter,
Yeah.
boom, NFL. His
Yeah.
defensive line coach went to the national championships.
Yeah.
When's the last time we could say that ever happened to anybody on GP's tree, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think what he does is he enables his coaches to do their job. I think the biggest thing, and I think the reason why TCU failed so much is because these last couple of years, it wasn't because of talent. We've always had good enough talent to be at least an 8 or a 9 win team.
Right.
I think that when Gary brought in his best friend to coach the coaches, which I still don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's like I don't even know if they were good at their job because I don't know if they were ever really allowed to do their job
Sure.
because Gary was so over the top and micromanaging and stuff like that. I don't know. I'll be curious to see how how what's his name does at Law Tech.
Oh, Sonny Dykes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be really curious how he does. I mean, when he was hired at Tech and he took over, they balled,
They did. Yeah. Yeah.
you
They played
know.
well.
And I don't know. I mean, I I used to be down on him, but it's like part of me is like, is it really him? Is it
Sure.
just the situation? And I think the players they kind of get that too, right? And I think that I think the culture just was going in the wrong place, man. It was stale. I
Yeah.
was at all the games and it was just like it was stale. They would try the first couple games, and if they had a loss or two, then I think people started shutting it down and they weren't playing, like I mean, there's no way that we should ever have lost to West Virginia.
Right. Yeah.
That should never have happened.
Yeah, there are a lot of those head scratchers lately. So turning our attention to, I guess, concerns. Tommy, what's your biggest concern for this team? You got a whole new defense. You're still figuring out the quarterback situation. What do you think could hold TCU back this year?
So as a program, my biggest concern is if what's going to happen with this realignment stuff. That's a program, right?
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
we're talking about this year. The biggest concern that I have right now is the defensive line.
Yeah.
And the biggest concern of all that is the nose guard, because that's such a key focal point. We need a guy who's going to demand a double or triple team so those linebackers can flow and come up and make plays. Now, I will say this. With Gary's defense, it's like you had to be a smart person. You had to be very versed and you had to do all these things to get it right. And to me, when you have an athlete who has to think instead of react and play, that's not a good thing, right?
Sure.
I remember watching the Baylor game several years ago when Baylor won it, and I remember we weren't even getting our plays in by the time that they were snapping the ball, and our defense is standing up, turning around, looking at the corner, looking at the coaches. I don't think that's something you can do anymore, right?
Yeah.
I think that we have athletes and we have very fast athletes on the back end, and we have some really solid linebackers. And I think if they're allowed to just react and do what they do without having to think, I think we're in a better spot.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Finally, before we go here, Tommy, I guess just give us your prediction. What's your record prediction for TCU football this year? And we'll say in the 12-game regular season,
12-game regular season, I think we could probably go 8-4.
Okay.
Or 9-3.
All right.
I think nobody knows because we haven't played, and I'm kind of curious what we looked at. I went back and I watched some games of like 2014 and 2015, and just how effortless the offense was. And I was just like, if we could just get some of that, and if our defense can be, I know for a fact the defense, and I think the offense will be better.
Yeah.
and we're always solid at special teams. So I think we could do 8 or 9.
8 or 9 would be good. Well, Tommy, thank you so much. This has been our fan corner segment. We got one more coming early next week, and I got one more spot available. So if you want to DM me on Twitter, I'm at Simcox Steven. The show is at Locked On TCU. We'd love to talk to a few of you. And yeah, this was fun. So we'll be back with more here on
Appreciate
Locked
it.
On Horned Frogs.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Uh-huh.